everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on digital safety. We have our world famous speaker, Professor David Smith and Professor Ching. First, I would like to give chance Professor David Smith.
Well, Sharif, thank you so much on a very important topic in today's time. The amount of malicious things happening in the digital world, the amount of misinformation, anything is really at a very high pitch today. And, billions of people around the world rely on digital services for their work, for education, for social interactive, for finance, for just so many different things. And digital safety is really essential for you to be able to do those things together, from protecting commerce, from the funds, to the safety of children and others. And tackling this type of harmful content, malicious code, uh, malicious sites is really a complex problem, and it's an ongoing challenge, particularly when you see that children's sexual abuse and exploitations there. There's terrorism, there's fraud, there's people stealing money through it. There's misinformation and a lot of bad content as well. But we're seeing new technologies begin to appear to kind of help strike a balance between both safety, security, privacy in the digital world, and also, on the other hand, trying to protect the freedom of expression, which these two are, kind of at odds. Because if you just step back and look a minute, almost 5 billion people use the internet all the time. And that if I just look at the internet commerce, McKinsey projects that by the end of next year, $2.5 trillion worth of commerce will be conducted on the internet. And one of the other statistics, which is kind of mind-boggling for me, is that one of three internet users is a young person under the age of 18. One of three. So a very interesting shift as you begin to go that way. And the the ability to deliver a safe, protected, secure online experience is really essential for global businesses, for governments, for individuals, uh, and it's really what you're trying to see happening. And there's a number of groups today beginning to put in place public-private partnerships to try to begin to tackle the content and the conduct problem. And many corporations are going after from the commercial, cybersecurity, and other side here. Uh, you see just so many popping up from all over the place. Uh, and major corporations putting money behind it to try to have it happen and be there. So you've seen groups like one of them, which is sponsored by WEF, includes not only people there, but includes We Protect Global Alliance, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Google. I mean, just so many companies coming together, and the advancing digital safety is the key to empowering people to make the most of this digital age. And uh, you really want to begin to see these going forward. So you have to begin to look at policies being put in place, by tools being put in place, by beginning to see understandings. Uh, Governments need to distinguish globally what is illegal content and what is content that's lawful that may be harmful, and do regulatory measures need to put around that. What is content uh, that is perfectly fine? Those are really gray areas right now. And regulatory measures probably need to be put in place to ensure that law and policy respect all people's user rights, both the permitted uses and the non-permitted uses need to be very clearly and protected going all the way around. And you need to support the victims and others as well. So, Sharif, I think that is kind of a quick introduction to get us there. It's a very important topic, but it's one that is challenging because there's so many gray areas in it.
Thank you, Professor Ching.
Well, you see, this is an important topic. Actually, this is a central topic because we are entering into a digital age. You know, mankind had already some experience in guns and the bomb that are not under good control. So society tend to control guns, and definitely the world is trying to control the nuclear bomb. But this is nothing compared to the the power of the digital world. See, up to now, we're just testing out the digital world. Okay, so in software and hardware, society just making prototypes. Okay, because the digital system best exemplified by DNA of the living system, which at its foundation is just 0, 1, 2, 3 digital. Okay, and what society need to be able to do is to be able to control all this digital thing and also be able to trace back to the source of the digital information. You see, and in the future, the digital world must be fully documented and also be fully traced. I'm saying this because the digital system is the controller of itself. You see, you can get the software to do anything you want if you're smart enough. In the case of Posan Institute, we have been able to make software completely automated. In other words, software can automate things. Okay, and why not completely automate software? And we did that. Once you do that, everything's done by software itself. Just like a living system, a human being, we don't need any documentation. Everything seems to be functioning by well because it's it's capable of controlling itself. So, my suggestion from pole science point of view is that we have to put the digital world on a complete automated foundation, just like in life science. Okay, if life is not complete automated, it cannot function. It's just too complicated. Not only that, as we see, there are danger in all the digital content, and I guess it's it's expected a long time ago, when we have powerful weapons, and now we have drones. Okay, it can really go wild, go out of control. So we need to look into much deeper knowledge. Unfortunately, this knowledge, life science, where it's almost, the truth is it's almost impossible for pole science to talk to life scientists because they are based on empirical verification, and we are talking about logic. Okay, complete logic. You have to have lots of data, but you need to relay all this data together to form a complete system. The final decision, final outcome depend on the relationship of all the information, not on all the information. So the world today is still in the scientific world, and we need to go into life science. We need to go into very complex system which must be controlled by complete automation. It cannot be controlled by partial automation. Today, people in computer science already sees the dark digital age and also see the unlimited prohibitive updating cost of software. Okay, nobody is updating those software. Okay, Microsoft charge everybody couple $100 every couple years to update to the new version. Okay, all these are people who are in the in experts who have lots of experience in software. They realize this cannot go on, and now this is spilling up over into uncontrollable spamming, uncontrollable digital blackmailing, and also very obviously it's going into military operation. That probably is not totally bad because it would currently seem like the superiority of U.S. technology, Western technology, is teaching Russian a lesson, so that in the future the war shall be fought based on digital supremacy, and this is the opposite to what we're talking about today. We're talking about digital safety. Okay, this is a double-edged sword, so we can't really say one way or the other. But anyway, this is it is really most people today, because we live in a money-oriented society, which is the dream of my mentor Milton Friedman, that we go for short-term monetary returns. And, if we look long-term and the non-monetary benefits, we will see we have to go into a knowledge-oriented society. So even in competition, we are going from military war to trade war, which is better, money-oriented. Then finally, we should go into knowledge war. So basically, what I'm saying is we need to promote knowledge and nothing else. All this thing about money doesn't make much sense, and it's not getting us anywhere. It's actually getting things worse, like today's digital safety problem. It's part of this thing. People just go after money. They don't care about safety. Well, so sooner or later, I think young people, also young countries, like I'm working with Taiwan, and let's see if they can. So they're looking into the possibility of the next new world, not stuck in this current situation, and having almost complete no valuation. What we need is valuation. You see, the infinite spreadsheet. We need to calculate to infinity all the benefit and losses. You cannot say that something good today will be good. Okay, today what's good today is not good. You see, what's good, what should be good for forever, for long term. And it doesn't really always the monetary part. It has to more important, taking into all kinds of other benefits, non-monetary benefits. So basically, I'm for knowledge. I think knowledge can solve this, and the people start to accept us, and we show them the computer automate software. So we make, see, today's humans are safe, so we make a digital system as safe as, living system, living things. So that's my basic suggestion. Okay, Rob, take over.
Thank you, Professor Rob.
Well, digital safety is a relatively large topic. I've been involved in security since before I started in college. My family owned at the time the largest electronic security company in the United States at one time. And then I've been a sheriff's deputy. I've been a head of security for my division in IBM. And I've since audited security and been a security analyst. And when I'm talking security, I'm talking about digital security, electronic security, for a number of years. This is a complex subject. At the heart of digital safety, though, is digital security is you. Most of the attacks come in through people. Yeah, we do have digital attacks. We do have hostile states that aggressively use other methods, but almost invariably, if you've got a large breach, you can trace it back to somebody that did something wrong. And phishing attacks are the most common way to get somebody to do something wrong, with spear phishing being that where you're targeting a particular individual, and phishing where you're targeting large numbers of individuals. And the goal is to get you to give up some aspect of your identity so that they can steal your identity and use your credentials to gain access to things they shouldn't have access to, be that your personal finances or your company's information, customer information, financial information, internal documents, proprietary information, all of that. And so the best defense against a hostile attacker is and remains regular training, so that people recognize the threat when they see it. They understand that if somebody's on the phone saying they are a person, they need to validate that they are who they say they are, and that they never give up certain kinds of information over the phone or over the internet, and information that defines them as a person: Medicare number, social security number, license number, bank numbers, especially not the bank transfer numbers. Those are things that folks like to fish. In fact, I got a phishing call the other day. I suppose it came in from Medicare, telling me they were going to issue me a new card, and it was amazing. They knew off the bat stuff they shouldn't have known. They knew who my primary physician was by name. They knew my full name, including how my middle name was spelled, which is unusual. They had my previous addresses. They had my current address. They had obviously had my phone number because they called me. The only thing they didn't have is they didn't have the right Medicare number. And as soon as they read off the Medicare number, I realized this was a phishing call, because the number wasn't even close. If it had been Medicare, they would know my Medicare number. They were trying to get all that was to get my Medicare number and to try to go in and pretend they were me and get some of my Medicare benefits, which would have landed me in a lot of trouble. So the goal is to be very much aware of what's going on. My wife was hit the other day with she got an email and it said, click on this link to get something or other. And clearly another phishing attack would have taken her to a hostile website. Hostile website would have compromised her computer, and then again we would have been in trouble. The difficulty here is really making sure that people are regularly trained against the kinds of threats that they can be looped into. Be aware that clicking on a link from an email, even an email from somebody that you know and trust, isn't wise, because they can be the emails can be spoofed, and an email that comes in from somebody may not be from the person you think it is. And same thing from a phone call. Now with generative AI. You can get a call and the voice sounds exactly like the person that you think they're from. And a lot of these attacks, a friend of mine was just hit the other day, called and told that his wife had been kidnapped by one of the cartels, and they needed to provide money to get her out and save. And it sounded like it was his wife screaming in the background as she was being tortured. Turned out his wife was fine, hadn't been kidnapped. She was just out of touch for a few minutes while she was between stores. So being skeptical, recognizing when somebody calls you, they may not be who they say they are. When you get an email, it may not be from who you think it is, and to make sure that you don't do stupid stuff. Be aware that a lot of the apps that are out there are hostile. You see an app pitch, looks like a lot of fun, it's free. You install it and you find out it's harvested your call list, it's harvested your call log, it's harvested your passwords, it's harvested your IDs, and suddenly you're in a world of hurt as you try to recreate your identity. And for anybody that's been through identity theft, back when I did the initial studies in the early 2000s, it was about 9 months of work and $250,000 to recover your identity if it was stolen. That's all out of pocket, unless you have a unique form of insurance, which virtually none of us have. Your insurance doesn't cover this. You're going to have to spend that money to rebuild your reputation, rebuild your credit score, and put yourself back on the planet as a viable human being. And it takes a while, and it can be incredibly damaging. And the $250,000 9 months, that's on average. So that means some people might have years and millions of dollars to get their identity back. While others, it might be a little bit cheaper. Really kind of depends on the nature of the attack and how much is compromised and how much of your credit they destroy. So the first step for digital safety is really you. To be safe, you need to do things like make sure you change your passwords regularly. Don't share your passwords or IDs. If somebody calls you from a company and asks you for your password and ID, understand they should know that. If somebody calls you and asks you for a Medicare number, a Social Security number, something that identifies you as an individual, banking routing number, again, if it's the bank, they should know all of that. So one of the first clues is if somebody that's pretending to be somebody else calls you and asks for something that they should already know, hang up the phone. Don't engage with them. Don't carry on any farther. Just hang up the phone and disconnect. And another good practice is if you're not expecting a call from somebody, and often you'll find law enforcement does not make calls like this. There are often calls that go out that say, hey, we're doing an investigation. You're in violation of blah, 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 and you need to send us a certain amount of money. It's a scam call. That's not the way the legal systems tend to work, at least not in this country. And I imagine they don't really work that well in other countries either. Take it with a grain of skepticism, and at the very least, if you think it might be legit, look up the phone number and call the number back to see if you can locate the person through a legitimate phone number. Don't do a callback, because if they're fake, that callback number is going to be problematic as well. Caller ID can be spoofed, so you got to get something that says it's from someplace like the FBI or law enforcement or something along those lines. Recognize that can all be spoofed. Caller ID is not bulletproof, and recognize that again when you're getting a call from an agency or an organization that you weren't expecting a call from, that it is likely a spoof call, and they're after something. And again, in doubt, just look up the phone number, call back using the phone number you looked up, and see if you can identify the individual. And in some cases, it's good to report it. Now, the biggest problem with, I think that the second biggest problem, or might be the biggest actually, after us, is accountability. A lot of these attacks are carried out from areas where there isn't a lot of legal cooperation. Russia, Eastern Europe, China. It's very difficult for law enforcement that aren't in those countries to take action against the individuals that are doing this. Russia, they tend to treat them like people that build arms. As long as you're not using the arms against the state, you're okay to do pretty much anything you want. And so your ability to bring action against some of these people is problematic. And that's really what creates the bigger problem. These companies, and a lot of them are large firms, are free to commit these crimes and without repercussions, without going back up. A number of companies, Microsoft, probably one of the leads, went through a tremendous amount of cost to try to bring these folks to justice, only to find that at the end of the day, they weren't having the impact that they had hoped. After spending a ton of money, they might get the companies shut down, but then it would just pop up again under different leadership a couple days later with a different name in a different building, and pretty much the same people. So it's kind of like whack-a-mole in terms of repercussions, and until we find a way for consequences to hit some of these firms, it becomes a very lucrative way for them to make money. Particularly when we talk about ransomware. Here in this country, they're looking at making it fundamentally illegal to pay a ransomware company. I'm not sure that's going to work. But at least it creates another barrier and may make it less profitable. And these companies are for-profit companies. They for most of them, we do have hostile states that don't really care about the profits, but we do. But the vast majority of these things are companies that are trying to make money. And if you can find a way to destroy their money source, then you can destroy the business. And it's really the only way to proceed. Is you have to make it unlucrative. You have to destroy the financial benefits to going to the companies, the individuals that are doing this, to at least get rid of the pros. You know, it's funny, as we started off, and as I started off in this back in the 70s, the threats were coming mostly back then from, you know, kids screwing around and creating viruses that were transferred via sneakernet, which is when you carried a floppy drive with a virus on it from machine to machine, and they spread very slowly, or comparatively slowly. And the industry itself made a mistake in that a number of the companies, and I include Microsoft here, thought security should be somebody else's job, and that bit them in the butt in the 90s. And then they took security on. IBM, an older firm, viewed security much more seriously, and from the very beginning, going back to RACF and the mainframe, that security was the responsibility of the computer company providing the technology. And now that's the way it is. The security is now owned typically by the platform holder, whether that be Google, Apple, Microsoft, or whomever. The security aspects are to a large extent contained within those firms. Now, there are still secondary firms that provide security capability, but most of the old ones have become obsolete over time. The McAfee's and the Semantics just have not been all that competitive of late, and we've moved to newer firms, BlackBerry Cylance for one, that's doing AI-based security products, both deep learning and machine learning concepts that look for variances in behavior. There's a firm out of Israel called Deep Instinct. It's also heavy deep learning AI, and what they fundamentally look for is behavioral changes. That they're not trying to do scripts, which is the way the old programs look, where you have a particular script that looks for a particular piece of malware, identifies and removes it. The problem is that you can have polymorphic malware, which over time morphs into something else, and the script-based approach doesn't work. And so in the end, right now, the state of the art is looking at behavioral things. If suddenly somebody in a company is looking at files they've never looked at before, they are immediately blocked and flagged for review because they've likely been compromised. And if they haven't been compromised, their rights can be restored and they can be reestablished. But the goal is to stop the breach before it does too much damage, and suddenly you have an event where you have to report to the government. So in the end, that's kind of where the technology is. That another technology that's flowing into this area is quantum technology. IBM's surfaced a service called Quantum Safe, which anticipates quantum computers and is supposed to create encryption at a level that quantum computers will struggle with. But right now, most any level of encryption taken against a quantum model can be broken in a matter of minutes, if not seconds, which means a lot of the stuff that has been encrypted, and we talk about stuff being encrypted at rest, where something has been stolen that's encrypted, the people that stole it haven't been able to get access to the data. They're just waiting for the technology to come forward that allow them to do this. And that keeps a lot of us awake at night, because one is you may not know the stuff has been stolen. But even if you did, you know the encryption that's protecting it has a time limit on it that eventually it'll be broken either through brute force over a long period of time, or once a quantum computer reaches quantum supremacy, at least in this particular area, that it will be able to breach it. So we've got some severe problems that are coming up, largely due to the fact that a lot of people, Kaspersky, another security firm out of Russia, but I think they were correct in this. They said there were two types of companies that knew they were breached and companies that hadn't figured out they've been breached yet. Their argument being that everybody's been breached. And that means there's an awful lot of data out there that is encrypted, but no longer physically protected, and simply waiting for a breakthrough that will allow it to be decrypted and then be compromised. And that could be defense information, that could be personal information, and it remains extremely problematic. So that's kind of my opening with regard to digital security, and I'll pass the hat to Mark.
Mr. Mark.
Well, digital security is definitely something that I know a lot of people are very much concerned about, and all along those lines. And I was actually hearing Rob and hearing what Rob had to say. I know some people that have been impacted by digital security, because I know some people that have definitely had their information stolen, even some family members, and all along those lines. So you have to do what you can to protect yourselves in those regards and everything. But a lot of times folks are finding ways to get that information, and sometimes it is not as obvious as we think it is, and all in that space. But I know that there are security measures, and I've even heard of one recently that I'd love to hear Rob's thoughts about, as well as David Smith, but I know that a lot of people are not the biggest fans of big banks here in the United States and here in the West. So a lot of people have gotten into the habit of using apps like Venmo and PayPal and Cash App. And I heard that there is definitely a pushback on that now. So there are even some government kind of things and other things that are taking place where they are going to be maybe more heavily regulated and more able to not be as easily used as they used to be. And I haven't remember in all of what I've heard, but I've definitely heard of some things that could change people's attitudes about using those apps, even those apps are very popular, particularly among the entrepreneurs and the young set. But I don't know if Rob had heard about some of these new regulations and some of these attempts. I think it was even a government agency that was discouraging people from using that kind of monetary apps because of it not being as secure as they would like. And ironically, that's the reason that some people like to use those apps, because it is a part of that whole blockchain decentralization conversation that people are not as trusting of their banks as they used to be. So in some ways, it may be going back to the old put the money in your mattress. So that might be that kind of attitude in the sense that the Cash Apps and others may be the new version of putting the money in your mattress and feeling more secure because you feel that you have more direct access to it and all in that space. But I didn't know if Rob or David had heard anything about these conversations, because I think it was either earlier this week or last week that some of the federal agencies were going like, nope, I know y'all have been having fun with Cash App and Venmo and PayPal, but we're a little concerned about the security of those, so we're actually discouraging you from using those. But I didn't know if Rob or Dave had heard anything about that, and if they're going to decline in popularity, because they are very popular and a lot of people are using them to get their money to their family, their friends, their college kids, and a number of other folks. But I was wondering if Rob or David heard anything about that and what their thoughts were.
Well, yeah. So real quick, what happened was that a lot of people have been putting money into these apps as if they're banks, but they're not banks. They're not federally protected. And so if one of them were to go under, you would lose all that money. And since they're not regulated or federally protected, they don't have the insurance on the amount. We have here in the United States, we have a $250,000 insurance on a federally licensed bank or credit union. And if those go under, at least you're protected up to $250,000, which when Silicon Valley Bank almost went under, a lot of those deposits were well above $250,000. They were deposits put in place by companies, because that's what Silicon Valley Bank did. So they were still going to be pretty much screwed if the bank hadn't been sold and those depositors made whole. But it was just a reminder that the Cash Apps don't have the regulation and protections, and particularly not the insurance that banks have. And so the warning went out saying that, like anything else, they're a risk. And if they make a bad financial decision, you'll lose whatever money you have in there. And if you're a business and you've taken a payment, but that payment hasn't transferred yet, it's the same thing. That the money may not show up if the company went under. Now, right now, none of those apps are at risk of going under, to my knowledge. But again, you often don't find this stuff out until after the fact. It's clearly we didn't know Silicon Valley Bank was going to go under until it damn near went under. So that they had a run and suddenly we had a problem. And the same thing could happen to a non-bank banking institution. So it's good to be, prudent. That put your money where it's safe. Don't necessarily put your money where it isn't. And they were just arguing that you can use it to transfer money, but don't have a lot of money in any of these things at any given point in time.
No, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I also heard, and I don't know, because I know it's popular not just here in the United States, but elsewhere as well, is that there are bank cards that serve as banks and actually are protected by banks. And a lot of people don't realize that, but I know that there is the very popular, you can see it on United States advertisement, and I think Canadian advertisement as well, which is the company NetSpend. And a lot of people will not realize, but if they look at the card, they will see that NetSpend is protected by a bank that is maybe not even in your area. I think that particular bank is in Texas and everything, but it is very popular and it does have some bank protection of some sort. Now, whether that is a strong bank or not a strong bank, only those that are in the banking industry would know. But I do know some people that have had some problems with the more traditional banks, and they have opted to do the NetSpend variation. And if you look at it, it does have some bank protections, because I think it's protected by a couple of smaller banks. But I don't know if you, Rob, or you, David, have observed that and had any thoughts around that, because I do know that it does. If you look closely the fine print has a bank that it is associated with.
Well, Mark, what you're seeing there is you're seeing companies coming together to create collaborations.
Right.
Doing that. Or you mentioned Texas. So like here in Austin, there's two different firms that have gone to the community banks, the small banks, and they're pulling together to create services that big banks offer. And that's a trend I actually think you're going to see continue more and more, because the small banks offer more personalized services, where the larger conglomerates kind of give one size fits all to people. But coming back to the topic, Sharif, unless you have a particular question for me, I was going to go and hit one other point that is really important in this whole area of digital safety. And Rob did an excellent job of introducing more and more of the cybersecurity parts of it. And I've been a player in cybersecurity for a long time, including quite a bit at the classified level. But there's something that you have to kind of look at, and it's known throughout the industry as the 7 layers of cybersecurity. And it's one that is very important. Rob rightfully spent time talking about how we are the weakest layer in any digital security, and how things like phishing and others are something that is actually getting really good and hard to defend against. But the human experience and our ability to remember things and do things is oftentimes the weakest area of digital safety. Look at the number of times you can go and pick up a notebook computer and either open the case or look at the bottom, and you'll find passwords written down on it. I cannot tell you during security audits how many times you see those things, or post-it notes stuck on the top of a desk with passwords on it, which doesn't work. Interesting, some of the public schools are trying very hard to move away from things and go to facial recognition to get away from having to use passwords as part of your digital safety approach. But going back to the 7 layers of what you want to do there, let me go from the most critical going out, but the 7 layers are, what is your critical information? In the government, we call this the mission critical information. What is the data? Where is it? What do you want to do with it? Rob talked about encrypting at rest and encrypting in motion. It's really important to look at those. And what is the data security that you want to put on that data you're storing and the transfer of data? There's digital systems that can be implemented that if that data leaves your enterprise, leaves your subnets, it can actually be destroyed in transit with keys built into it. There's other security approaches that if that data is stolen, like for example, a notebook computer is stolen, you have remote keys that can wipe all the information. And the first time it touches the internet, for example. So you have some of those types of tools that can be applied. The next layer is application security, and who should have access to what are the rules, what are the roles, what are the permissions. One of the biggest places where corporations and governments run into problems with this is what's called privileged account access. One of the largest data breaches in the United States, money-wise and everything, was one where a healthcare company was breached in California, where the security at the top end was actually very good. But what they did is the hackers used a privileged account and came in the back end and bypassed all the security. And so the privileged accounts are something you really have to be careful with and protect. And many of us have privileged accounts on even our personal things and don't understand the control there. But then you begin to look at the endpoint security. That's what most of us are familiar with, where we have firewalls on our computers, where we have antivirus programs on our computers, where we have malware protection. Uh, and you begin to do that. Then you have network security. Then you have perimeter security, which is both, which includes the physical access to it. And then, like I said, the human level is there, because it's really interesting because people kind of think it applies for all, but not all data is created equal, and some of it you really have to do much more protection on it. And what do you want to do? For example, I might feel comfortable uh, browsing the internet in an area like using a public Wi-Fi hotspot. But let me tell you, I don't feel comfortable doing banking that way. I go into encrypted tunnels, VPNs, to go and do anything that has any of my personal information in it. And usually, when I'm in a public access area, I tend to run that out of a virtual machine, and not my normal machine, anyways, to still give me some protection. Um, and do it. But most people think nothing of connecting into a public area where you don't have any of the credentials of it. The connection path might not even be encrypted, which most of the times it is not. And going into our health records, going into our banking records and stuff. And that's part of your digital security toolkit that is very, very important for you to implement. Now, Sharif, I'm going to go to questions you always ask. I almost can read your mind at times. And this is something that is applicable for both the developing nations and the developed nations. What I have seen in my travel, particularly in the developing nations, where people are often given devices to come online, where they go and share workstations together. Like when I have been in Haiti, when I've been in Africa, when I've been in some others like that, you go into internet cafes, and I hate the term, and you share workstations. Boy, those are hard to secure. How many of us go into coffee shops and spend time there on their Wi-Fi access? And there was a cybersecurity study done recently where they sent people into dozens of coffee shops around multiple cities. And in many of them, there was an official hotspot, but then there were other hotspots that were masquerading to be public hotspots there. That yes, you get some internet, but they also stole all of your credentials, and they tried to put malware back up on the devices you were using. So you have to be very, very careful when you're out in the public, when you're as security professionals, when you're out in the wild, because the wild is pretty wild at times, and you really need to put the extra safeguards there. But be aware of what the data is you're accessing. Because, like I said, not all data, not all access is created equally. So you have to do that. And in the developing nations, it's even harder because many times they're sharing equipment, they're giving things, they have not had an education on how to use it. So often they're trying to explore it. And there is such a unbelievable amount of solutions out. In North America alone, the number of cybersecurity companies is mind-boggling. Uh, mind-boggling. There's over 100,000 cybersecurity companies in North America and Central America alone. Why are there so many? Well, what happens is it's a very complex area, and there's not a product that can solve all the problems out there. But on the other hand, with having that many products, they don't work together. Which creates other problems down the road. So
Hey,
if I
David,
had my solution, I would choose a few, but there's not one size fits all.
Hey, David, along those same long lines, there is a conversation point that I've heard many people talk about, and they use the term. It almost seems like an oxymoron. I know there are people in both the developed and um, the various kinds of nations, whether it's first world, second world, or third world, but there is a term that is used, and like I said, it almost sounds like an oxymoron called ethical hacking. So I was wondering if you could maybe allude to that and maybe even talk about that, because I've heard that people say that this is a
Sure.
positive thing and everything, but I'm going like, isn't that an oxymoron? Because you don't want hackers, but
Well,
apparently they think you
ethical
want ethical.
hacking is part of how you do penetration tests. And in penetration tests, you have white hat and black hat hackers. The white hackers are the ones where you, the company, the government agency, or whatever, say, I want you to go ahead and test my network. I want you to test my systems, test my people, and only use your tools to do it. Black hat hacking uses that in others. I'll give you an example. A company I was CEO of, we established state security network operating centers in many of the states. And in each of those states, we did pen testing, we did security testing, and we were authorized to use both white hat and black hat on those. Uh, we had one state agency where the executive director of that was really not a very nice person. They actually went to the state legislature to try to exempt his agency from the testing. And he was not very nice. And we went and did a kickoff with them and stuff. And he continued to be not very nice. So we did something really bad, and I know Rob will get a smile at this one. Microsoft had just brought out their mouse called the Arch mouse, which had a flexible mouse. It could bend. Being a new product, their wireless receiver on it had a lot of extra space on it. And we went ahead and put a few little software gifts in that extra space on that wireless receiver. We packaged the mice back up and we sent them to employees of that agency as a gift from Microsoft. The number of people who plugged them in was a tremendous amount. And most of them called home, and we were able to take over that entire network. That is black hat hacking. We used the people and did it to do it. Ethical hacking, white hat hacking, is we would just have used our means to try to look at vulnerabilities, to go in and do that way. But people, as Rob said and as I said earlier, is your biggest weak spot in any network. And that's how you begin to exploit that. And it was really interesting because in the final report to that agency, we sent the executive director screenshots of his email inbox, of memos he had written that were on his machine and stuff like that. Of us, and he was 1,000% before that we would not find anything. So that's the differences there. But pen testing is a real necessary evil for corporations and governments.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You'd also mentioned earlier phishing, and I can tell you that phishing, a lot of people, when they think about the dating aspect of phishing, but it has definitely grown now, because I can't tell you how many emails I get on a regular basis where people are basically doing that cold call phishing kind of thing of wanting a particular service or whatever. They might want to
all the time
do their algorithm or do a number of other things, because it seems like that has become even greater than some ways than the dating kind of phishing that was going on, because a lot of people want you to buy into their system and what they are trying to sell to help your marketing algorithm and all in that space. So is this a growing aspect of phishing? Because I know that
very
it's
much
because
so.
of TV that I'm seeing. What did you say, David?
I was telling Sharif that I hope I was answering the questions he would have asked me.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Ching. What's your concluding remarks? And
Yeah, okay. Well, the digital system are speeding up
Yeah.
the safety problem. Okay, and we had the safety problem in the past. Okay, and also even if we want to be safe, I know all the hackers. The best hacker, the worst hacker. Okay, they can do anything people want. All these people, they just they are not doing harm now. Okay, fortunately, most of them are pretty very basically bad people. So they are not doing, but they can do anything they want. So even if we want to be secure, okay, with these people, I'm also, with these people, why I'm talking to these people, because I'm also one of those people who are at the top of the technology of this field. You see, even if they want to be safe, they cannot be safe because the society spread things that are not quite true. Okay, in social science, definitely we know. Okay, because every time there's a financial crisis, I talk to the Federal Reserve Chairman. Okay, and in security, I tell you, this ISA, DES, all this encryption system, they are not the solution. Okay, this can be cracked. Okay, and they try to, the mathematician, they have a way to, they use calculating the primes as a way to do encryption. Okay, this is just a solution looking for a problem. The mathematicians are looking for, using a solution to look for a problem. Okay, in my case, I think I suggest to my student I have solved the problem of encryption, and any one of them they want to think about, they can come to think about. Encryption is quite simple. It's one number changing to another number and change it back. Okay. Changing over is easy. You can use all kinds of systems to change the system, but to change it back, okay, take complete automate software, which has a complete automate updating feature. Okay, another word, any source code can be updated to any other source code. Okay, this is the solution of encryption. Nobody is attacking this because nobody understands complete automate software. Okay, so basically, even if you want to be safe, want to be perfect, you cannot. Okay, there are too many lies going on in this society, especially in the field of life science. Okay, in the field of computer automation, you almost cannot find anybody to talk to. Okay, the closest we can talk to are the mathematicians, but they don't want to work on real world problems. They want to work on their simple, mathematical problems. Okay, the real world problem is very difficult. Even if they want to work on it, they cannot. Also, they have to come into the real world, which is scary to many mathematicians. They don't want to, come to this is very smart, not to get their hands dirty, not get their feet wet. So basically, there is this fundamental problem, technical problem that is not solved, and where there's not much hope in really try to see if we can get into this digital safety problem. Fortunately, today we deal with money. So the worst can happen is you lost money, and the best is to save some money. So this is really again become a current society's money game. Okay, the more problem, just like in medicine, the more people get sick, the more money doctors make. And then this same thing with the safety, digital safety. Company can make money using this. But why, my position as a founder of pole science, why people not going into knowledge. Okay, I need to get some countries to get down to knowledge. Okay, it doesn't make sense to move around in this knowledgeless, just talking about all kinds of things which is just related to money. And there's lots of talk, not much really, improvement. So there's some fundamental questions. And everybody have experience. Once, the way the nature teaches us about what we should do is to give a pain and suffering. I guess there's not enough pain and suffering in the safety business, so people do not really care. You see, people like us, here, all of us here, we are probably quite wise. We know what not to touch, what to touch, and it really depends on a person's background, person's knowledge, but whether one will be safe or not in this digital world. So I guess this is a central subject for knowledge. Okay, even way back in the past in history, we need to look into this along with everything else, not to neglect this. But but it's really depend on social priorities. Today we are in a money-oriented society, so this is pretty much a known problem. It's not going to be
Thank you.
done one way or the
Thank
other.
you. Thank you. Mr. Rob, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Well, just real quick, on penetration testing, I'm a big believer, though I should point out that one of the biggest tests we did when I was at IBM, we worked with a company, we wanted to create a demonstration site, an impenetrable business. And it was a good lesson for me, and we did. The business was rock solid, from physical security all the way across to digital security. You couldn't breach the systems, and then we hired an ex-spook, a guy out of the CIA that was a specialist in hacking sites, and he broke in within 30 minutes. I don't think it took 30 minutes. He took a look at what we'd done and said, "Yeah, I'm not going in there." He looked at the companies that the firm was connected to, trusted other companies, and he broke into one of them and used one of the trusted links to breach the company. And the showcase was, it doesn't matter how secure you are, if somebody else has access to your stuff and they're not secure, they're the weakest link. And you have to remember, when it comes to security, defense has to be 100% effective. Offense doesn't. Offense only has to find one exploit, and they're in. Defense, you have to find all of them, because if you miss one, the attacker is going to undoubtedly find it, and they're going to be in. And so I quickly learned I didn't want to be on the defense side of the security problem. Being an SEO, chief security CSO, chief security officer, was not something I wanted to aspire to. For that very reason, it was very difficult. Also be aware that if you're worried about breach, some old tactics like hidden watermarking, which saved my job at one point. I'd created a very confidential file while I was at IBM, and it ended up over with a competitor who gave it to our largest customer, who read my report and then discontinued business with the firm. And there's nothing like having the CEO call you into the office wondering and asking you why you should continue to have your job. And the head of sales was adamant that I should be fired on the spot for the problem. But I watermarked the report, and so I was able to trace back down the report that had been leaked. And it turned out that head of sales had been the guy that had leaked it specifically to get me fired. Long story short, he left. I did not. So you thinking through how to secure your own stuff is also incredibly important. And watermarking is one of the things you can do if you're concerned about having something that you created a leak and being held accountable for it, because they will and you will. And if you can't tie it back to whoever actually leaked it, there's a good chance you'll be done, as I almost was. So thinking through the ways that people will attack you, thinking through the where the exploits likely are, and making your career plans around security so that you're not on the defense side, unless you absolutely have to be, is my advice kind of going forward, and recognizing that in most cases you're your own worst enemy when it comes to digital security. And if you can fix that problem, you're probably 80% of the way there to keeping yourself from being exploited. Recognize that the goal of any security program isn't to make yourself absolutely secure. It's to make you more secure than the next guy, so that's the next guy that gets hit and you don't. It's a very it's not the friendliest strategy that I can think of, but it's the way we do business here. It's you don't have to be absolutely secure. You just have to be more secure than the other guys. The old joke of two guys running with the bear, and one guy stops and put on tennis shoes, and the guy says, "What do you put on tennis shoes for? You're not going to outrun the bear." And the guy says, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." And that's kind of the way we do things. Is you want to be more secure than the next likely target, so that becomes their problem and not yours. Absolute security is not an achievable goal, but you need to make sure that you are a much lower priority or a much more difficult target than the next guy in line, and then you'll survive. Best of luck out there. Interesting topic, Sharif. That's my answer.
Thank you, Mr. Martley. What's your concluding remarks?
I mean, I think everybody's pretty much covered it. We definitely have to be very safe in this digital safety kind of area. Definitely a lot of people are looking at their own portfolios, their own ways of being safe. And a lot of people are, as David Smith had alluded to earlier, going to public places. And a lot of times they are not always protected. I know that I work at a cultural art museum, and definitely a lot of times people will ask to have access to our websites and all in that, and there are actually two of them in that particular venue. We do have one that is more open to the general public, and a lot of public places will have that, and then they will have one that is a little bit more protected and all in that space, that is the internal system and all in that kind of way. But definitely that is something that folks need to be aware of, that they're in a public place, that there are people, including some bad actors, that might be trying to find ways of getting access, and it's not just always the man in the back, the man in the shadows that is stealing your ATM information. There are some folks that have ways to do it that are a lot more complicated and a lot more detailed than just being the man in the shadow, which is that stereotypical vision of the person that steals your bank account information by looking over your shoulder and all in that space. And Rob will give him a smile because he knows about that kind of trope that used to exist and everything. But there are some folks that are more complicated than that and more sophisticated than that. That's the word I was looking for, more sophisticated than that. And we have to find ways to protect ourselves. And I think that some of this conversation has been alluding to ways that we can do that. And hopefully there will be additional shows where we'll talk about specific ways that you can protect yourself in the digital safety lanes. But I do know that is a concern of many, both the elderly as well as some of the young folks, because many of the young folks are getting involved in the digital space on a rapidly growing basis. So definitely we have to find ways to be involved in this, but also be safe in the involvement.
Mm-hmm. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. I request all of our audience, please share our content with government agency, corporation, and academy. I want to give a special thanks to Mr. David Smith, Professor Ching, Mr. Rob, and Mr. Markley. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.